Okay, so have you ever thought about the options we have for long-lasting birth control right now?
Hmm.
It's pretty intense when you really consider it. I mean, you're either going under the knife for a surgical procedure or getting stuck with those big needles every 3 months.
Right. It
Yeah.
definitely raises the question of whether there could be, a simpler, more convenient way to go about it.
Exactly. And that's actually what we're diving into today, a potential new method that's honestly pretty fascinating.
It is, yeah. It's really cutting edge stuff.
So we came across this article in The Guardian that caught our eye, right?
Yeah.
It talks about some research that was just published in Nature Chemical Engineering, and they're basically exploring this whole new approach to long-lasting contraception using an implant that you get through an injection.
An injectable implant, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, so none of those surgical procedures you were talking about?
Right. And for our listeners out there, this isn't just some abstract science experiment.
Yeah.
This could actually have a really big impact on how accessible and convenient long-term contraception is in the future.
Absolutely. And, that could change the game for a lot of people. Plus, the technology they're using for this injectable implant might even have implications beyond just contraception.
Oh, definitely. We'll get into that.
Yeah, so in this deep dive, we're really going to break down how this injectable implant works. What are the potential benefits? What are maybe some of the downsides? And probably most importantly for everyone listening, when can we expect to actually see this becoming a real option?
Definitely all important questions.
So to kick things off, let's just lay the groundwork by talking about what we have available for long-lasting contraception right now.
Okay, so currently we do have some effective methods that last for a while. Implants, for example, can provide contraception for several years, but they require a minor surgical procedure to put them in and to take them out.
Right. I mean, I know a few people who have those, and it seems to work really well, but yeah, surgery is always a bit of a deterrent.
And then there are the longer-acting injectable contraceptives, which are great for a lot of people, but they typically require you to come back for another shot every 3 months.
Yeah, so it's still a commitment, having to schedule those appointments and everything.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's kind of the current landscape. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of this new injectable implant. What's the main idea behind it?
What's so groundbreaking about this approach is the fact that the implant forms inside your body after the injection.
Whoa, so they're not injecting an already formed implant.
Exactly. It's not about putting in a pre-made device. It's about delivering the components that actually assemble themselves into an implant right there at the injection site.
Okay, that is super cool. So it's almost like a tiny little self-construction project happening in your body.
Pretty much, yeah. And this has the potential to really simplify how we manufacture these implants, and it could even get rid of the need for those specialized surgical skills to put them in.
Right. It could really change the accessibility of this type of contraception. Okay, but self-assembly, that sounds pretty futuristic. How does that even work?
It's actually pretty clever. So they developed these teeny tiny crystals called microcrystals made of a synthetic form of progesterone. And these microcrystals are suspended in a special type of solvent that doesn't like to mix with water.
Progesterone, so the hormone that's already used in a lot of contraceptives, right?
Exactly.
Okay. And then what happens once you get the injection? Does this stuff just kind of float around?
Not quite. See, when that solvent comes into contact with the fluids in your body, which are mostly water, things start to get interesting. Those progesterone microcrystals, they're what we call hydrophobic, which basically means they want to avoid water at all costs.
So they're like little water phobes.
Yeah, you could say that. They much prefer to interact with each other than be surrounded by water.
Ah, okay, I see where this is going. So they start to clump together to get away from the water.
Precisely. And here's the really neat part. As that initial solvent diffuses away and your bodily fluids take its place, it triggers the formation of even more progesterone crystals.
Oh, wow. So it's a double whammy. They're clumping together to avoid the water. And A&D new crystals are forming at the same time.
Exactly. And all of that leads to the creation of a solid implant right where the injection happened.
So it's not just a liquid spreading out. It actually builds a defined structure.
Right.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And they've actually tested this out already.
Yes, this is what we call a proof of concept study.
A proof of concept meaning.
It means they've shown that the idea actually works in a controlled setting. In this case, they tested it in rats.
Okay, rat models, that makes sense. So they were able to create these self-assembling implants in rats.
Yes, and the researchers were very careful in selecting and refining the type of solvent they used to make sure that self-assembly process happened reliably.
So what kind of results did they see? How long did the contraceptive effect actually last in these rats?
Well, in the rat models, The progesterone release was sustained for at least 97 days.
97 days.
Yes,
Wow.
which is pretty significant considering their lifespan.
Yeah, that's a pretty decent chunk of time.
And Dr. Giovanni Traverso, one of the researchers involved, suggested that with a few tweaks to the formula, they might even be able to achieve longer durations.
Oh, wow, even longer than 97 days.
He even mentioned that the dosing and volumes they used are compatible with multi-year dosing.
Multi-year, so someone could get a single injection and be covered for years. That's huge.
It's definitely a very exciting possibility.
Okay, so let's dive into the potential advantages of this injectable implant compared to what we have now.
Sure.
I mean, I'm already seeing a big one, a simple injection versus a surgical procedure. That alone seems like a game changer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a much less invasive, less daunting option for a lot of people. And then you have the potential for this extended duration that we were just talking about, the possibility of a single injection providing contraception for years.
Right. It would eliminate all those follow-up appointments and the hassle of remembering to get another injection every few months.
Exactly. And the article actually pointed out that this technology might be useful for more than just contraception.
Oh, right. I remember reading that. So it's not just a new birth control method. It could be a whole new way to deliver medication.
Exactly. Dr. Traverso actually suggested that this delivery system could be really effective for a whole range of drugs that are poorly soluble hydrophobic.
Hydrophobic, so like the progesterone microcrystals.
Exactly. They don't mix well with water. And these types of drugs often need to be released slowly over a long period of time. He specifically mentioned treatments for things like HIV, tuberculosis, schizophrenia, chronic pain, even metabolic diseases.
That's incredible. So you're telling me this could be used to treat all sorts of chronic conditions?
That's the idea. Imagine someone who's managing schizophrenia, for example. Right now, they might be taking pills every single day.
Right.
But with this technology, they could potentially get a single injection that lasts for months or even years.
Wow. Talk about improving someone's quality of life and making it easier for them to stick to their treatment plan.
Right. It takes the daily burden off their shoulders
Hmm.
and ensures a consistent delivery of the medication.
And I imagine that could be a huge benefit for a lot of people managing chronic conditions.
Absolutely. It could really transform how we approach long-term treatment for a wide range of diseases.
Now, one core that comes to mind is what about reversibility? What if someone changes their mind about contraception or there are unexpected side effects? Can this implant be removed?
That's a really important point.
Mhm.
And the good news is yes, because the implant forms as a solid structure, it can actually be removed if necessary.
Oh, phew. So it's not like a permanent decision.
Not at all. And that addresses a concern that some people might have about committing to long-acting contraceptive methods.
Definitely. It's good to know there's an option to reverse things if needed. And I think I also read something about the size of the needles they use for the injection.
Yes, the researchers specifically designed the technology to work with small needles.
Oh, that's good to hear. Nobody likes those giant needles.
I know, right? And using smaller needles could make the whole injection process much more comfortable and acceptable to people.
Great. That makes a lot of sense. So they've really thought this through.
Yeah, they seem to be considering all angles.
The article also mentioned an expert, Dr. Janet Barter, from the Faculty of Sexual and Reproductive Healthcare, who gave her perspective on this research.
Oh yes, Dr. Barter.
What did she have to say about this new development?
Well, she called it an exciting advancement, and she was particularly enthusiastic about its potential in low-resource settings.
Low-resource setting.
Places where access to health care and traditional contraceptive options can be really limited.
I
She pointed out that injections are generally much simpler to administer than surgical procedures, and they don't require as much specialized equipment or infrastructure.
That makes sense. It could really expand access to effective contraception in areas where resources are stretched thin.
Exactly. However, she was also careful to emphasize that we need a lot more research before this can be rolled out widely. She stressed the importance of carefully studying the safety, efficacy, and accessibility of this technology in different populations.
Right. Of course, we can't just assume it'll work the same way for everyone.
And she made a really important point about engaging with potential users, making sure that the final product actually meets their needs and preferences.
Right. Involving the people who would actually be using this contraception is crucial for its success.
Exactly.
So all of this sounds super promising, but I'm guessing it's not something that's available just yet, right?
You're right. It's still early days for this research. While the results in rats are really encouraging, we haven't seen how effective or safe this implant is in humans.
Right. Those rat studies are a great starting point. But the human body is obviously a lot more complex.
Exactly. There's so many factors to consider, and we need more research to make sure it's safe and effective for people.
Absolutely. So, what's the timeline looking like? When can we expect to see human trials for this injectable implant?
Well, Dr. Traverso mentioned that they're hoping to start human clinical trials within the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay, so it's not right around the corner, but it's definitely on the horizon.
Yeah, it seems like they're moving forward with the research at a good pace.
So let's just recap what we've learned about this potential new method. We're talking about a totally new way to create a long-lasting implant, not just for contraception, but potentially for other medications as well. And it's all done through a simple injection. These microcrystals, they basically build themselves into an implant right there in your body. And the early research in animals is really promising, showing that it could be more convenient, last longer, and even be removed if needed.
That's a great summary. It really highlights the key points.
And I think what's most exciting to me is the potential for this technology to go beyond just contraception. The idea that we could manage chronic conditions with these long-acting injections that could be revolutionary.
I agree. It could dramatically simplify treatment for so many people and really improve their quality of life.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's clear that this injectable implant technology has a lot of potential, and the early research is definitely generating some buzz.
It's fascinating to see how something as simple as the way these tiny crystals interact with water can lead to such potentially groundbreaking applications in medicine.
Right. It's incredible. And it makes you wonder about the future. If this technology really takes off, how could it change healthcare access and personal choices down the line? Especially if we're talking about multi-year dosing for contraception or other medications.
It's a really intriguing question to consider, and I think this research is a great example of how innovation in materials, science and drug delivery keeps pushing the boundaries of what's possible in healthcare.
Yeah.
Coming up with creative solutions to challenges that we've been facing for a long time.
Absolutely. It's definitely a development worth keeping an eye on as the research continues.
I agree. I'm excited to see what the future holds for this technology.